Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Couchman Games. I'm your host, the Couchman, and yeah, it's been a bit, since we've done any sort of upload. So I figured it's time to get back into it. And why not? What's a better way than to talk about a game that's coming out here soon? And that game would be TemTem. It is a Pokemon-like creature capture game that's branding itself as an MMO. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen what I've done on my channel. I've played things like World of Warcraft and whatnot. So I like my MMOs, but I also like my Pokemon games. I haven't uploaded anything to my channel about Pokemon because I actually haven't had a Pokemon game to upload with in a while. I played Sword recently. Really kind of got into it. It's been a very fun experience, but it hasn't scratched that itch. Well, this game, it's looking like it might be able to get that. This is a game called TemTem. It's an online Pokemon like game, as I pretty much said previously. However, the difference between this is it's not Pokemon. There are some key differences between the two games. The online aspect of it. The whole game can be played in co-op. Different creatures to capture, different combat mechanics, things like that. So what I decided to do is I'm going to make a series of videos explaining some of the key differences between TemTem and Pokemon. Now, if you're a veteran Pokemon player like myself and many others who are interested in this game coming out, you'll pick it up very quickly. There's not going to be a staggering number of differences that you'll run into. But for those who maybe have played Pokemon once or twice but never really got into it and are more into the MMO side, this might be something that's a little bit new to them. So I figured, why not make some videos to help some of those people, get up to speed on what exactly needs to be done in order for you to be successful in a game like this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this list. Today's list is going to be about the combat of TemTem. Now, it is very similar to Pokemon, but there are some key differences between the two of them, and I'll briefly touch on them here. If you have any further questions, definitely drop a comment down below, and I'll try to get to them as fast as I can. So, let's get started on the list. Alright, so the first noticeable difference between TemTem and Pokemon is going to be with the moves themselves. You'll notice in TemTem, they have a bar, and this bar is called a stamina bar. Now, the functionality of the stamina bar functions the same as something, say, like Dark Souls. If you've ever played Dark Souls, you know about the stamina bar. You've got this strict bar that you can use for sprinting, dodging, all that kind of stuff, attacks, whatnot. And once that depletes, you are no longer able to perform those functions. You have to wait and recover some of your stamina before you can make that move again. Well, TemTem functions in a very similar way. Say you start the battle off and you launch your strongest attack and it eats up half your stamina bar. Well, now you're not going to be able to do that attack again. You're not going to have enough stamina. So you have to end up waiting for your stamina bar to come back before you can launch that attack again. Whereas in Pokemon, you have the power points. You have a set number of times you can use that move before you're no longer able to use that specific attack, and you begin to do like the flail or whatever, whatever the heck it is. But in TemTem, you have you have your stamina bar, and as it's going down, you can keep using it all you want. You can keep using all your attacks 1,000 times if you have enough stamina. But once you run out of stamina, that's when the secondary cost comes in. It puts your TemTem into a specific condition called exertion, and I believe it halves your attack. That's actually going to be talked about in the next segment here. It halves the attack that your TemTem does and begins to actually take some of your health as the cost. And the cost will vary depending on the attack. If it's a very light attack, you can lose a small amount of health, and that will actually be okay in some strategic situations to be able to take out someone else. Just, okay, bam, there we go. I lost a little bit of health, but I took out this guy as well. But on the flip side, if you have a massive attack that you need to unleash and you do it and you don't have nearly enough stamina to cover the cost, you're going to lose a substantial amount of health, potentially putting you in a position that you could get wiped. And those are some of the key differences that you'll notice right off the bat for the moves themselves. Next, we'll be talking about the conditions in TemTem. Alright, so next we're here to talk about those pesky status conditions, and TemTem has quite a few of them. Now, this initial list might change depending on the early access release. On the 21st is when they're releasing it, so some of these may or may not still be there, but we'll find out. So the very first one they have on their list of potential ones from their official page is cold and frozen. So cold is a double thing. So they have to be hit twice with a attack or an ability that does cold, that applies cold, and then once they do that, they become frozen. Now, in this frozen state, they cannot attack, but they can rest, so they can regain stamina. And the only way to do this is to apply the burnt condition, which is a secondary condition that fire causes. Essentially, it's the same thing, but that is something that can be used. So if you have a TemTem that can hit something twice, they're frozen, and they're stuck like that. Can't do anything. You're froze. The next one is asleep. Pretty straightforward. You apply sleep. The TemTem can't, attack. The trick is, though, if they're damaged, it will wake them up. And certain TemTem, like the mental typing, which is another thing we'll talk about. We'll talk about the different types there are, is immune to the asleep condition. They cannot be put to sleep. However, putting a TemTem to sleep does increase your catch chance of them. I don't know the specific numbers. It seems to have changed from the very first I heard about this game till now. So who knows? The next one is trapped. Trapped TemTem can't be swapped. It can't be exchanged out. The Doom is another. That's a unique one to TemTem. If a TemTem has the Doom counter put on it, if the Doom counter reaches 0, the TemTem is dead. So say it's Doom in 3 turns. Well, you gotta get out of this fight before the end of that 3rd turn, or your TemTem gone. Seized, a TemTem loses their gears effect, so you can put gear on your TemTem. Same thing as like a held item. Seized will knock it off, take it from them. Straightforward. Poisoned is another one. Poison TemTem will lose 1/8 of their health every turn. The toxic type TemTem, which are essentially poison TemTem, are immune to this one. Here's that pesky burnt. So burnt TemTem will lose 1/16 of their health every turn, and it reduces their attack and special attack by 30%. So not only does it keep them from, they'll tick down health every turn, which is always a good thing, especially in this kind of game when health pools are much larger. But it also reduces the amount of damage they do. So essentially this TemTem becomes really useless. They need to pull this one back and swap out the TemTem. You know what I mean? It's one of those situations where strategically it doesn't make any sense to have a TemTem that's not outputting a lot of damage. The next condition is the one we talked about earlier, exhausted. Sorry, I kept calling it exertion. Exhaustion, when your TemTems run out of stamina, I'm sorry, this isn't the one I was thinking of. Exhausted, the stamina cost of an exhausted TemTem increases by 50. Actually, no, I think that is the right one. I think I am right. I don't know why I'm second guessing myself here. Vigorized, the stamina cost of a TemTem decreases by 50%. So this is the one where it's the polar opposite. When you get vigorized, your TemTem will now be able to spam pretty much whatever technique you want, and you're not going to run out of stamina. The next one is immune. It's pretty straightforward. You're immune to status conditions. No, you can't apply burnt, you can't apply poison, you can't seize anything. You're immune to it. The next one is regenerated. Each turn, the regenerated TemTem has 1/10 of their health restored. It's like a renew from World of Warcraft or something like that. It's just a ticking heal. And the last one is neutralized. Neutralized TemTem have their resistances and weaknesses omitted, essentially meaning that everyone is on an even playing field. You don't have an immunity to poison. You don't have an immunity to sleep. It's all a fair game now, mother trucker. So, again, list is completely subject to change. It's at their whim, or they can add more. To me, it seems like there's a lot of back and forth between here, which is a nice little balance, but I feel like they need to throw a monkey wrench in there. They don't have like a standout effect besides that Doom one, which I would love to make a Doom team. Just everything applies Doom no matter what you do. Now, I don't know how that works in terms of like if, say, you put a Doom counter on it and then you recall the TemTem and put a different TemTem out there, does that Doom counter still tack on while they're in your I guess card? It's the TemTem version of a Pokeball. It's like a digital card, a capture card kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, that is all of the conditions as of right now. The next thing we're going to be talking about is the ability to change out your techniques on the fly. All right, so next thing we're talking about here is the ability to swap abilities. Huh. Kind of a poor choice of words on my part, but anyway, so in TemTem, much like the new Pokemon games, you have the ability to actually swap your techniques. So any learned techniques by your TemTem can actually be swapped out at a later time. So if you find an ability that you're like, oh, this doesn't do me any good right now, and then later on you're at a dojo and it turns out the dojo leader has this one particular TemTem that's kind of a pain in the you know what. Well, it turns out you have the ability to swap that power or move back in and you can use it against them on the fly. Now, I'm not 100% sure if there is a cost associated with this. I feel like there probably is, but without actually playing and doing it, I never, you know what I mean? The way I learned about this was the same way anyone else could. I was watching someone else's playthrough and they just paused and said, holy crap, I can do this, whoop whoop, and they just swapped out some abilities and I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. Now it didn't have a cost associated back then, but that was alpha footage, so that all is subject to change again. Everything I say is subject to change on the 21st. They could just rewrite the entire game and I'd have no way of predicting that. That's all up to the creator. But that is one of those things that it's something you can plan ahead of time. If you know this particular, dojo master has an annoying TemTem, you can swap in an ability that gives you a severe advantage, and that is crucial in this kind of game where your stamina is very limited. You only have a certain number of moves you can make. So I think being able to swap on the fly is a pretty handy dandy little ability. So it's definitely going to be in this list of combat stuff. Alright, so next on the agenda is the different types of TemTem. Now, just like in Pokemon, they have different typings, different strengths, weaknesses, yada yada yada, different move pools, all that good fancy jancy stuff. It's nothing new here, but there are some different typings. There are also going to be very similar typings as compared to Pokemon, so you should be able to pick up on those pretty quick. Even if you've never played a lot of it, it's pretty straightforward. So we have neutral, which is like normal. You have your water, earth, digital, which is the unique one to TemTem, fire, electric, wind. We got nature, mental, crystal, toxic, and melee. So those are the 12 different types of TemTem, and each one will have its own strength and weaknesses. Obviously fire to like nature is going to be stronger, and yada yada. It's pretty straightforward. Nothing really. How should I say, like, not unique, but not too heavy of a curveball. It should be a very easy thing to understand as you're going through, as you're capturing TemTem and stuff like that. You'll pick it up, strengths, weaknesses of each one. The one that I think is kind of the unique curveball here is the digital TemTem. That is a it's a unique typing exclusive to TemTem, and the only time you ever get to see one, at least that I've seen so far, is in the very beginning. Your rival actually has a digital TemTem, and anytime I've seen anyone play the opening, it smokes your starter. Same level as you, one shot kill. So I don't know if it's digital is the one typing that's like effective against everything, making it very strong, but it's also maybe weak against everything. I don't know. Without really digging too far into it, it's hard to say. But yeah, so those are the 12 different typings, and you can hop on their official forums list and go through and see each one, what their strengths and weaknesses are. We might actually do that and just kind of plop this in right in the middle, just as a FYI, because now I'm curious about that digital TemTem thing. But anyway, those are all the typings, so let's move on to the next thing. Hey guys, just an FYI, I did do a little bit of Google searching after my last rant about the digital typing. The digital typing is only effective against the 3 starters you get in TemTem. It does have its weaknesses. It's weak against itself, it's resistant to poison, water, and electricity. Both are super effective against it. However, like I said, it's weak, or it's effective against all the starting type. That's why it always one-shots the starters in the beginning. So yeah, just wanted to clear that up before we moved on to the next thing. All right, on to the next topic at hand. So right now we're going to be talking about move priorities. In, say, something like Pokemon, a lot of it's determined by your Pokemon speed. If your Pokemon has really high speed, you do tend to go first. Well, there are also in TemTem, you have things like, it's called priority. Pokemon has it too, stuff like Quick Attack. It has a higher priority. It will go first regardless of your speed. So you could be slower than your opponent's Pokemon and yet still move first. However, the difference is if, say, in Pokemon you come up against someone who's using, like, Quick Attack versus Quick Attack, it's going to boil down to who's faster, who's got the higher speed count. TemTem kind of functions the same way, except for the moves themselves have different priorities. They've kind of expanded upon that specific aspect. So you have very low, low, normal, high, very high, and ultra. Ultra pretty much is you're guaranteeing you're going to attack first. Very low is you're going to go last. That's the range it has. It's nothing too crazy. It's pretty straightforward. And the moves themselves will have a priority count on them. So as you're looking through trying to pick what attack you do, in the bottom right hand corner you will see a couple of golden arrows. Some of them will have like a plus sign on them, stuff like that. That will determine your priority. That shows you what priority you have on your technique. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's, if you have an ultra priority move, it's going to go first unless it comes up against another ultra, and then that's probably when they factor in your speed rating, because you still do have a speed rating for your TemTem themselves. So, but yeah, pretty straightforward. A lot of this is pretty straightforward, I feel like. It's just sometimes people just need a refresher, and or maybe there's a little bit of extra that they weren't aware of, say like the move priority. This is one of those things where you don't know about it until you play it. And then you're like, why is this move always go second? Or, you haven't seen the game really explain, that the priority thing is there. It's one of those things where I think they kind of leave it to you to determine and figure out for yourself, because I don't think this game is going to be nearly as hand-holdy as Pokemon. I think Crema has done a good job of making a good balance of, yeah, it feels Pokemon-esque, but at the same time, it knows you're not stupid. You've played these games 1,500 times. You don't need to be handheld the whole time. You need, in the beginning, just to get you to pick your TemTem, and then after that, it's like, here you go. Here's the world. Go explore it. Make it your own. So, all right. On to the next and last topic we have for this video. So the last bullet point we have for this video is something called move synergy, or technique synergy, because the moves are technically called techniques. So one of those things that as we move forward with this, we got to correct, because I've said move a lot. Anyway, so synergy, what it does is it's essentially a boost to your power if you pair your TemTem with another TemTem of a certain type. For example, on their official wiki, they have an ability called Aqua Stone. It's a water type technique, and if paired with an earth type, TemTem will actually boost the amount of power or damage that technique does. And there will be an indicator on the move itself. So if you're looking at your techniques in the list, you got your 4 different techniques, there will be a symbol in the top left hand corner, a plus, or some sort of indicator. I don't know if it's changed or not, but there is some sort of indicator showing, hey, this move is boosted, you might want to use this one. Another example that they used is if you use a technique called high pressure water, which I believe is another water type move. It doesn't specifically say on their site, but if you pair it with a fire type, it'll actually apply the burnt condition on top of dealing whatever damage it is. So it's a lot of back and forth, and it's finding that synergy. And I believe only some techniques have this ability. Not all of them can simply just be boosted by putting a TemTem with another TemTem and suddenly you're good to go. It's finding those moves and finding those good pairs and building your team around that idea. So that way, if say one of your TemTem goes down, you're like, oh man, I gotta get back in this. You can throw another TemTem out there and say, hey, this guy I know syncs up with this dude over here that's still kicking from this fight, and he can get a boost, or the other TemTem can get a boost, and now I can use him as my main weapon, or things like that. And it's all a back and forth game. And this is one of those really cool aspects that I'm really excited to see in action, because I mean, if you get one of those big bomby hits and you're like, this attack will do a ton of damage, and then you pair it with this specific TemTem, and suddenly now it does twice as much damage and applies, burnt, or it applies poison and stuff like that. It's like, damn, that's a really cool secondary effect that it didn't have before. So on top of an awesome move, now I've got an extra secondary effect that kicks in, and that just adds another layer to the strategy of this game. And it's one of those reasons why I'm really excited to play this. It just seems like they thought about this combat. They kept it Pokemon-esque so people can pick it up and still play this game comfortably and then learn all these extra things as they go along. It's just one of those things where it's really exciting to see, and like I said, I'm really excited to see it in action. But we'll have to wait till the 21st to play it, unless we happen to get lucky and manage to get in on the stress test. So, but I think that just about does it for this video. I think that covers all of our bullet points that we needed to cover for this game. If you guys liked what you heard, please, feel free to leave a comment and a like on the video. It definitely will help out, and it will encourage me to keep making more of these videos. I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, definitely get a hold of me in the comment sections. And I will see you all in the Airborne Archipelago. Couchman, out.